Welcome everyone! In this video, we are going to be diving into my top 5 best teams for the Master Premier League. Now, at the time of recording this video, the Master Premier is set to drop tomorrow at the normal times that leagues typically reset, and it will be running alongside the Open Master League. So I always have fun in the Master Premier League. Kind of nice. Very fun meta, pretty consistent meta, probably, arguably, the most consistent meta that we've had in Pokemon Go Battle League overall. There are a few additions to the meta, I will say, in the form of Ursaluna, which may be making an appearance or two on a few of these teams, and there are a few others as well. So, without further ado, let's hop into team number 1. All right, my friends, here we go. Team number 1, a very powerful team for the Master Premier League, and it leads with Florges on the lead, Snorlax on the safe swap, hopefully as a best buddy, and Gyarados in the back to bring it home for you. Now, this is a very powerful team, and that is because it is arguably one of the more well-rounded teams, I should say, that you can run in this meta. Very broad and sweeping coverage, and the team is just a home run, and definitely one that you will see on this channel. And what makes this team so powerful is its flexibility. So we are leading Florges, but you can really mold this team to suit your needs based on your elo and what you're seeing a lot of on the lead. So you don't necessarily have to lead Florges. Any one of these 3 Pokemon make for an amazing lead option in this meta. So again, the flexibility of this team, broad sweeping coverage across the entire meta makes this team quite powerful. Let's have a look at this scorecard here. And I was not kidding, guys. Look at this scorecard. Straight A's across the board. You literally don't get much better than that. You get an A for coverage, A for bulk, A for safety, and an A for consistency. Holy smokes, what a scorecard. Let's have a look at these matchups here. So the beauty of this team is not only how effective it will be in this meta, but its simplicity. It's very easy to understand and get the hang of. Florges on the lead is going to be winning lead a lot, with the exception, of course, against the powerful steel types. And that is really all you need to know about this team if you choose to lead with Florges. You're swapping. I will add hard swapping on any steel lead that you will encounter. The good news is that there are only a handful of viable steel types in this meta. They come in the form of Metagross, Excadrill, and Magnezone. I want to focus on the third, Magnezone. Magnezone's a massive core breaker. If you happen to lead with Florges, because it core breaks, it obviously beats Florges, but it beats Gyarados even harder, which makes it a bit of a challenge to overcome if you encounter it on the lead. It's much better if it's in the back, because that opens up many more scenarios that you can explore. But if it's on the lead, it's going to be tricky. Ultimately, it's going to come down to a team effort between Snorlax and Florges. Snorlax doing the bulk of the grunt work, if at all possible. But the good news is that Magnezone is not known for its bulk, so even resisted damage does add up against it. So the play, if you encounter it on the lead, is the same with any steel lead that you will encounter. You're going to go into Snorlax and play out that mid-game matchup with whatever they counter-swap you on. Hopefully, Florges can get enough of an energy lead to perhaps do something against the Magnezone. Your best bet is to fight as hard as you possibly can for switch, and then play on from there. But the other 2 prominent steel types in this meta are a lot more easy to handle. I will say Metagross is the easiest steel type to overcome. And that's because Snorlax and Gyarados have solid victories over Metagross. They handle it quite well. And that's why we've got those 2 particular Pokemon in the back, because I predict that Metagross, maybe Excadrill, but I'm thinking you're going to see quite a bit of Metagross in this meta, as it had a community day. Everyone has one, and it's pretty hard to avoid not using it. Excadrill as well, not going to be as difficult to overcome because Florges can actually hang with Excadrill. It does have a narrow loss, but that hard-hitting resisted damage sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but when we're talking Excadrill, it's not. Because much like with Magnezone, even resisted damage adds up against Excadrill. And it is recommended that you run Fairy Wind, but let's not discount the power of Vine Whip as well. It does give you some additional fast move pressure against at least Excadrill, but I'm not sure that I would venture so far as to recommend using that, but it is an option. I definitely recommend running with the new Fairy Wind fast move. But everything else in between, pretty straightforward. You're going to have a lot of fun and a lot of success with team number 1 here. Like I said, this team is quite flexible. It has broad sweeping coverage across the entire meta, which will set you up for the most success. So that is team number 1. Florges on the lead. Snorlax on the safe swap, and Gyarados in the back to close the game strong. And like I said, guys, the beauty of this team, quite flexible. You don't necessarily have to roll with Florges on the lead. It's going to be based on your elo and what you're seeing a lot of on the lead, which makes this team so powerful. You can mold it to suit your needs. But with all that said, that is team number 1. Let's have a look at team number 2. And here we go, team number 2. Yet another powerful, strong, and effective team that you can run in the Master Premier League. It leads with Gyarados on the lead, Ursaluna on the safe swap, and Metagross in the back to close the game strong. So I do recommend that you run Dragon Breath with Gyarados on the lead. You could run Waterfall, but you don't really need it. It could come in handy for some of the steel types in this meta, I will admit. But I do like Dragon Breath up against opposing Waterfall Gyaradoses. And that's kind of why you want to run it, because both of the two Pokemon in the back, particularly your Metagross, will have trouble with any Gyarados that it encounters in the meta. Gyarados is one of the hardest counters to Metagross in the entire meta. Yeah, very solid team. The two Pokemon in the back, because you're running Dragon Breath, are meant to protect Gyarados from the strong fairies in this meta, particularly Primarina, which is the hardest counter to Gyarados. We finally have an excellent answer to Gyarados in this meta. It has wreaked havoc for many seasons by now. And the emergence of Primarina kind of keeps Gyarados in check, which is why you want to have optimal coverage for it. And you do have that in the form of these two Pokemon in the back. So that is how the team is designed. Protect Gyarados from Primarina and let it wreak havoc. That's the concept behind team number 2 here. And amazing scorecard for team number 2. You get basically straight A's across the board, which is quite good. You get an A for coverage, A for bulk, B for safety, and an A for consistency. Very, very good and solid scorecard for team number 2. Let's have a look at the matchups here. Like I said, Gyarados is an absolute powerhouse in the Master Premier League. Does quite well. If you're running Dragon Breath, you do have to protect it from the fairies, and that is what we are aiming to do with our back 2 Pokemon. Ursaluna proves to be a very solid safe swap option, has pretty decent coverage in the meta. And you can really hit those Primarinas pretty hard with those Thunder Punches. That's why I had my eye on Ursaluna to protect Gyarados from the Primarinas, because Primarina is an absolute nightmare. And it can absolutely hold its own against all of the other fairies in the meta, those being Florges and Togekiss. Those are the 3 primary fairies that you're most likely to encounter. You could see Sylveon as well, and Ursaluna beats them all, and lest we forget, Metagross absolutely dominates the fairies as well. So pretty straightforward. There aren't any there aren't too many core breakers to team number 2, excuse me. Magnezone, yet again, much like with team number 1, can also be a thorn in the side for team number 2. It's going to take a team effort with Magnezone. Your best answer is Ursaluna, and if you're running Dragon Breath, you can't really afford to stay in there on those Magnezones, which is a very strong case for the Waterfall version. It gives you a fighting chance. Honestly, guys, I'm going to leave it up to you as to what fast move I would recommend, but generally, I do like Dragon Breath in this meta because a lot of people do tend to run Waterfall Gyarados, and you kind of have to be able to fight back against those. So, yeah, bit of a toss-up, I would say, but ultimately, I am leaning toward Dragon Breath on the lead. So, kind of a team effort between Ursaluna and Metagross for those Magnezones. You might even consider, and I would actually recommend safe swapping the Metagross on the Magnezone leads if you happen to encounter one. That's your best bet, and try and flip switch with Metagross if at all possible. Metagross is so powerful in this meta that you, with some tactical maneuvering, you could very well pull off flipping switch to with your Metagross. So Magnezone leads. Rather than swapping in your hard counter Ursaluna, I would go into Metagross and try your very best to make something happen if they choose to stay in. But it's not likely that they will because Magnezone's such a good matchup against Gyarados that you will likely be faced with a counter swap, and then you just want to really try your best to flip switch or at least grab a shield advantage from there. But again, everything else in between is not too bad. It says that Gyarados has a narrow loss to Conkeldurr on the lead. If you happen to see one, they're not terribly common. But just know that if you encounter it on the lead, that's going to be in the 2 shield. Gyarados does lose the 1 shield scenario up against Conkeldurr, but on the lead, it's going to be the 2 shield, and that is a much different story. So no worries on Conkeldurr on the lead with Gyarados. And yeah, everything else is pretty straightforward. The team dynamic pretty simple to understand. We're protecting Gyarados from the fairies and the strong steel types. And you've got protection against the fairies in the form of Ursaluna and Metagross. So with all that said, guys, that is team number 2. Gyarados on the lead, Ursaluna on the safe swap, and Metagross in the back. So yeah, that's team number 2. Let's have a look at team number 3. All right, guys, here we go. Team number 3. Another pretty solid team overall for the Master Premier League. It leads with Primarina on the lead, Snorlax on the safe swap, and Ursaluna in the back to close the game strong. So, the dynamic with this team is protect Primarina from the strong steel types, i.e. Metagross and Magnezone. So, and Excadrill to an extent, although Primarina does have a fighting chance against Excadrill, but we're primarily protecting Primarina from the Metagrosses and Magnezones that we may encounter. And we are also looking to hard wall all of the Gyarados leads. That is how this team is designed. Let's have a look at the matchups here. So, very strong scorecard for team number 3. Identical to team number 2. You get an A for coverage, A for bulk, B for safety, and an A for consistency. You don't get much better than that. Let's have a look at these matchups here. So, Primarina, in anticipation for all of the Gyarados leads that we are undoubtedly going to see, we're leading with Primarina to give you a good... we're playing the odds here, guys. That's what we're doing with team number 3. To set you up for the most success in winning lead on all of those Gyarados leads. All of the dragon leads that we may encounter as well. Primarina is going to be doing quite well. You just really want to protect it from the steel types, most notably Metagross. Metagross is a very, very difficult challenge for Primarina, which is why we've got these 2 Pokemon in the back. We've got these 2 very strong and thick normal types in the back. Snorlax excellent on the safe swap, one of the more reliable Pokemon in the entire meta. If you encounter a Metagross on the lead, you're going to safe swap into Snorlax and play on from there. Same goes for Magnezone. Snorlax can do quite well up against Magnezone because it's so tanky. It comfortably tanks a Wild Charge, no problem, and can still keep on going. So that's why we've got Snorlax on the safe swap. And if things don't go awry, you've got a second strong and bulky normal type in the form of Ursaluna, which can also put in work against the strong steel types. So that's how this team is designed. You're set up to win lead a lot with Primarina, and all you're really looking to do is protect it from those steel types. Classic ABB style team. And you're going to be doing just fine with team number 3. If you choose to run it, you're going to be doing well against just about everything except for the steel types. Florges can be a bit tricky, as Florges applies intense charge move pressure and is bulky enough to withstand the nerfed charms in the Master Premier League. So you can stay in a little bit, chip the Florges down a bit, and then mix it up by save swapping your Snorlax. But Florges, not a big deal really for team number 3. And Togekiss can actually be a bit of an issue because it can start throwing out those ancient powers. And so Togekiss, you're going to want to mix it up immediately. Hard swapping out into Snorlax to see what they have in the back. But everything else in between, pretty straightforward, guys. You just really hard swapping out on those steel type leads, and you should be looking good from there. So that is team number 3. Pretty solid overall. Primarina on the lead to handle those Gyarados and Dragons. Snorlax on the safe swap, and Ursaluna in the back to close the game strong. So that is team number 3, guys. And with all that said, let's have a look at team number 4. All right, here we go. Team number 4. Another solid team for the Master Premier League. It leads with Metagross on the lead, Mamoswine on the safe swap, and Dragonite in the back to close the game strong. Now, this team is constructed in a way in preparation for the fairy leads. So it's meant to counter those strong fairies that come in the form of Florges, Primarina, and Togekiss. And we just want to protect Metagross on the lead from primarily Excadrill and to an extent Magnezone as well, which is why we have the 2 Pokemon in the back. Now you might be saying, well, doesn't Dragonite lose to Excadrill? Well, and the answer would be, it depends. Depends on if you can grab those shields from that Excadrill, and that's why we've got Mamoswine on the safe swap. So Dragonite actually does quite well against the steel types, despite being at a type disadvantage with the dragon typing, and that is because it was updated with superpower, which gives it a fighting chance. So not too bad handling the steel types with Dragonite these days, guys. Let's have a look at the scorecard here. And not bad. Very solid scorecard for team number 4. You get an A for coverage, B for bulk, B for safety, and an A for consistency. That is a very solid scorecard for team number 4. Let's have a look at these matchups here. So, like I said, leading with Metagross, we are prepping for the very strong fairy leads. Florges ranked 1 first overall in the Master Premier League, and that is for good reason. It is quite strong. But it does have a kryptonite that comes in the form of Metagross, because you do apply super effective damage with your Bullet Punch fast move. You also do quite well against Primarina, despite only dealing neutral damage. That's why Primarina is so strong with that water typing. It neutralizes what would be super effective damage in the form of the steel type damage. But Primarina still loses to Metagross pretty hard because although it is neutral damage, it hits hard. And Primarina, not the bulkiest fairy that we have seen in this meta. So if you encounter Primarina on the lead, you're going to be doing quite well as well. Some things that you want to look out for on the lead is Gyarados. Gyarados has historically been one of the hardest counters to Metagross in the meta, which is why we've got the two Pokemon in the back. Mamoswine on the safe swap can actually do quite well against Gyarados, provided it is not running Waterfall. If it's running Waterfall, you're going to have to employ some tactical maneuvering. If it's Dragon Breath and you encounter it on the lead, you can actually hang in a little bit because a resisted Meteor Mash does quite a bit of resisted damage to Gyarados. And that would make it easier to swap out and play on into your Mamoswine and play on from there. But if it's running Waterfall, it's going to be tricky. You can still stay in and perhaps soft lose lead and then look to come in with Dragonite. That's probably the safest play for Waterfall Gyarados on the lead, because then Mamoswine in the back would be set up to close pretty strong, because that's really one of its hardest counters, Waterfall Gyarados. So that's how I would play Waterfall Gyarados lead. Soft lose lead, do as much damage as you can in the zeros with the Meteor Mash, and then look to come in with Dragonite and play on from there. What else? Magnezone on the lead's pretty tricky. They do have to debuff themselves with the Wild Charge, and that makes things a lot easier. If they do debuff, you can actually swap out of that. You want to wait for them to debuff. You might have to give up a shield in the process, but that is the key. They might even give you switch advantage because they won't want to stay in there after throwing the Wild Charges. So not too bad with Magnezone. You have to get a little bit creative, but it's not impossible. So the way to play, if they're committed to staying in and debuffing with those Wild Charges, you do tank one pretty comfortably. You will have a really difficult time tanking two, so you will have to throw up a shield on that second one. But if they don't give you switch, you might have to force them to swap by swapping out into your Dragonite and playing on from there, because once it's been debuffed, it's a lot smoother for Dragonite. You don't want to go into Mamoswine because that's your hardest counter, which is why you'll want to go into Dragonite and play on from there. Dragonite quite strong in this meta, guys. And I think that's about it. Excadrill, of course, you're hard swapping out into Mamoswine and looking to play on from there. But that's about it for team number 4. Pretty straightforward, pretty solid scorecard overall, and it leads with Metagross on the lead, Mamoswine on the safe swap, and Dragonite in the back to close the game strong. So with all that said, that is team number 4. Let's have a look at team number 5. And last but certainly not least, team number 5, another powerful team for the Master Premier League. It leads with Florges on the lead, Excadrill on the safe swap, and Garchomp in the back to bring it home for you. So the dynamic of this team, it's a classic ABB style team, and it is designed to protect Florges from the Metagrosses and let Florges just roam free and wreak havoc. That's the dynamic of this team. Both Pokemon in the back provide excellent coverage against Metagross and Magnezone, which allow you the most success to shine with your Florges. Let's have a look at this scorecard here. And not bad, identical to team number 4. You get an A for coverage, B for bulk, B for safety, and an A for consistency. Let's have a look at these matchups. Holy smokes, look at all of these purple and pink X's for Florges. No wonder it's ranked number 1 overall. My goodness, Florges, super powerful in this meta, and that is why we are leading with it. We just have to protect it from the Metagrosses and Magnezones, and to an extent Excadrill as well, although Florges can really fight back against Excadrill with the resisted damage, as it is not known for its bulk. We're really just protecting it from Metagross and Magnezone in this meta. And we do have solid protection for those two. Everything else, Florges basically absolutely dominates in the 2-shield on the lead. That's how powerful this Pokemon is. So you're fine to stay in on everything with the exception of the Magnezones and Metagrosses. That is a very... that narrows things down quite a bit, which sets you up for the most success. This team is super easy to get the hang of. Garchomp with the Mud Shot, Earth Power, Outrage moveset does quite well against just about everything in this meta with the exception of Togekiss, again, which is what makes this team so powerful overall. Garchomp can prove to be an amazing closer, and you don't want to save swap Garchomp because if you get that thing switch locked on a Togekiss, that could be quite disastrous, which is why Excadrill is the dedicated safe swap on this team. So not much to really go over with this team. It is quite simple. You're staying in on everything with the exception of the steel types, and if you do encounter one, you're safe swapping Excadrill and either grabbing shields or flipping switch with it, which will allow Florges to roam free and wreak havoc. And hopefully with that shield advantage, you will set Garchomp up to perhaps close if necessary. So that is team number 5. Very simple, classic ABB style team for you guys. And it leads with Florges on the lead, Excadrill on the safe swap, and Garchomp in the back to close the game strong. And that about wraps it up for my top 5 best teams for the Master Premier League. Should be a lot of fun. Those of you who don't have the resources or don't really want to participate in the Open Master League, the Master Premier League has always been an excellent second option to compete and have some fun in. Much more accessible than the Open Master League by a country mile, I would say, and is always a lot of fun. Like I said, it's been a very consistent meta over the seasons. Not much has really changed, and that makes for a very fun time. So guys, I had a blast. I hope you all enjoyed. As always, I thank you for watching, and keep up the grind. Thank you, guys.